Good evening. This is the City of Kingston Rent Guidelines Board public meeting for the research and analysis presentation. It is Tuesday, June 18th at 6 p.m. and I am calling this meeting to order. I'm going to do a roll call of who's here. Noah Kipliogman, chair, that's me, I'm here. Diana Lopez Martinez is not here and sends her regrets. Mie Nuye.
Here.
Anthony Jr. Tampone.
Here.
Tara Perry is not here yet. Michael Tierney is not here and sends his regrets. Carol Soto.
Yeah.
Arlene Puentes.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Arlene Puentes is here on Zoom. Thank you, Arlene. Hi. How's Denver? Don't answer that.
Thank you. Very nice.
And Lee Dodson.
Here.
I understand. Do you want to say something, Woody? I will pass this to Woody Pascal from the Division of Housing and Community Renewal.
Hello, can you hear me? Perfect. All right. First, on behalf of Commissioner Ruth Ann Visnaskis and the Honorable Steve Nolis, your mayor, we want to thank each and every one of you board members for your service. We clearly recognize that the last couple of years have been tumultuous for the residents of Kingston, trying to understand what their rights and responsibilities are, trying to navigate through the litany of laws and regulations that are what we call rent regulation. And I want to just briefly kind of talk about what we do at ORA so that tenants and owners understand their rights and responsibilities and what they're supposed to do. One, owners are required to file initial registrations with us. Out of the 64 or so buildings, I think April 6 or no, 11 of them, 10 of them are out of compliance. And they're now currently going through the administrative hearing process. All of the other buildings have either submitted their applications, their initial registrations, and or have filed for determinations to ensure whether they can be out of the program. And I think there's 11 of them that are actually looking to opt out based on various things. And again, those cases are being processed now. And there's direct engagement between the owner and whatever tenant is involved in this. And there are a couple of buildings that have already come out based on regulatory agreements that we've had with either our agency or with the city of Kingston. Now, with that being said, we've gotten a litany of cases that we could not, I won't say process, but through court issues, we had to slow down the processing, and they are now all, I call it, moving around. We've got 52 fair market rent appeals that are pending. No decisions have been made, but they're assigned and being processed. There again is a process for this, which again, we function like a court. So there's a lot of back and forth. On average, these cases will probably take anywhere between 6 and 9 months to be resolved. We don't have any overcharge complaints, but again, we've got the 52 fair market rent appeals. There are currently no lease violations that are there, and I know that we've gotten 15 or so service-related cases that have gone through the process. The uniqueness of what's happened here in Kingston has not happened in 40 years, April, in terms of the back and forth between the courts and how this has put a freeze on recognizing the rights and responsibilities, whether you are a tenant or an owner. However, we're here. I'm here. April's here. And Bika's here. We plan on continuing to engage tenants and owners as we see fit. We've worked with the Hudson Valley Property Association to do trainings for registrations. And I hate to say this, but this year, out of the 64 buildings, only 8 have registered. Now, probably saying, that sounds like a bad number. Yeah, It is a bad number because they only have until July 31st, which a new law kicks into place, which will now force them to be fined heavily. And the fine is going to be $500 per unit after every 30 days of noncompliance. So it's a hefty fine, and I'm hoping that our partners in government, Hudson Valley Property Association, will work with us to ensure that the owners register with us. We will also work again, trying to work with our partners in government. We do plan on spending quality time here engaging tenants and owners. We may have a tenant night, we may have an owner night, we may have a combination of that happening in the near future, but we have to recognize that this court case that's still kind of out there may impact our ability to do certain things. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm going to turn it over. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Can you just tell us what the status of the court case is?
It is
But while the motion to re-argue is pending, what is the status of the city's declaration of an emergency and this board's 2022 to 2023 guidelines? I just want to be clear, the guidelines are in place because the appellate court decided that the guidelines should be in place. Appellate court. Yeah.
and the survey. And there's no stays on the application process.
This is Arlene. I can't hear whomever is speaking. Whoever just spoke.
Thanks, Arlene. We are inviting April to come sit at a mic.
Hi, Arlene. All I was saying is that currently the court cases, the appellate division case is still pending in the 3rd department. The papers have been submitted. We're waiting for a decision from the appellate division. However, regardless of that, at this point in time, the study that was done by the city of Kingston was upheld by the courts. So ETPA rent regulation is in effect in Kingston. And the 2022-2023 guideline is also in effect. That means anybody that was entitled to file or to obtain a lease renewal between August 1st, 2022 and September 30th, 2023 is entitled to a 15% reduction on that lease. I don't know, we don't have numbers for you as to how many people have done that, but
If folks have not seen that, how do they go about correcting that? What's the appropriate complaint to file with DHCR?
they would file lease renewal complaints if they haven't gotten a lease renewal, and they would file overcharge complaints if they haven't gotten the reduction, if they've been paying more than they were supposed to be. And that doesn't mean necessarily there'll be a reduction found, but they need to actually hold their place in line, so they need to file those applications.
And Woody just told us that there are 0 overcharge complaints filed and 0 lease complaints filed. So, so it sounds like either folks haven't been filing those, or they've been trying to file something that hasn't been the right thing. Okay. Right.
This is Arlene. I have a question.
Hold on,
what
Arlene.
about-
I
okay.
think, hold on 1 second, Arlene.
Okay.
I think the challenge again is tenants and owners are both in that gray area. They're trying to recognize and realize what their rights and responsibilities are. And Unfortunately, there have been situations where other outsiders may have not given them the right information. So they're both in this gray area. Again, I think as we're looking at this, and as April talked about the court challenges and issues, once that is complete, we're all hands in. We're going to do what we need to do, which again, spending more time in beautiful downtown Kingston is not a problem. We enjoy it. And again, owners' night, tenants' night, combination of the two, office hours here at City Hall or some other venue that we can use to kind of engage both sides.
I do have to say that I had a long conversation with an owner yesterday morning, and my advice to him that I'm hoping you can ratify is that when tenants file complaints, the thing that owners need to do is to participate in good faith in the process administered by DHCR and abide by the orders that DHCR produces.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Arlene.
Yes, I was wondering, does this mean a refund to residents? And also, what about a resident who moved out? Does that mean a refund to these residents who have moved out?
I don't think it necessarily means a refund to tenants that moved out. And the refund is based on what rents tenants paid and what tenants were supposed to pay. And that's part of what the process is at DHCR, is that everybody needs to submit those documents. So if a tenant moved out and didn't have a lease, then there wouldn't be a lease renewal reduction that they would be entitled to. It's not automatic. It's something that's based on the lease. And contrary to some popular belief, everybody in the city of Kingston is not entitled to a 15% reduction in their rent unless they had a lease renewal that was due during that time period. Like last week, there were people that testified their 2-year leases overlapped that time period. They wouldn't have gotten a 15% reduction because that's based on when your lease renewal kicked in.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I just wanted to clarify the first point that you made, the first statistic. You said out of 64 buildings, 10 are going through an administrative hearing process. About what, could you just say more about?
They have
what
not
those-
complied with registration, initial registration.
Okay, but then at the end of your presentation, you said, okay, so you're saying this year only 8 have complied.
8 out of 64.
So so then you're saying for the previous year, all but 10 complied with the
Yes.
initial registration.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And there's a subset of that have also applied for, whether it's an agency determination or sub-rehabilitation. Maybe the building was built after 1974, and maybe there was major work that was done where they replaced 75%
75% of
the building systems. So we're going through that process with them now.
Okay. And they have to register every year, the property owners?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
again, it's important that they register because the fines that are going to kick in this year are hefty.
And they
$500
didn't
per
get
year.
fined last year. It's this year that it kicks. Okay. Thank you.
in prior times, the fines came with like the 8 or 10 that are pending. Once they go through a hearing, they will be fined. But the legislature has changed it so that it is a $500 per month per room, per unit, not per room, thank you, per unit fine on owners. So, if you have a 10-unit building, that's a $5,000 a month rent fine for not filing the registrations. And every year
Unlike-
they need to file 2 things. They
Right,
file
and-
building registrations and they also file annual apartment registrations.
And the uniqueness of this is there is no administrative law process like all other case types. So this is literally what they call a commissioner's order. My signature's at the bottom, and then you have to go to court, file Article 78. So it's better for the owner to register with us and for us not to come after them. It's going to happen.
more question. Is there any, but there's no fine for not complying with the rent reduction or not complying with the rent freeze?
There is.
There is a
There's-
fine?
There is a potential fine, again, depending on the individual and whether they let us know that there's still an issue. So they
Okay.
can file a non-compliance case, which again goes through the administrative law process. But again, they've got to let us know.
Okay. Thank you.
In Stony Run, we were advised that we should sign leases that did not have the 15% included in it, reduction included in it, because if a tenant if the courts ruled suddenly against the tenants, then the tenants would have to pay that money back to the landlord. So in Stony Run, a lot of people have been given leases very early. And we were made to understand that we had 60 days to sign those leases, even though they said 2 weeks. And people have begun to sign those leases. So that doesn't represent any 15% reduction.
Well, a couple of things. Individually depends on when they moved in, which April had talked about.
Right.
But in addition to that, anyone who's getting a lease, what I call not a
Renewal lease.
it should be on DHCR language, and it's a certain font size, and there's a writer attached to it. So there's a bunch of things, and it's in fact just how the owner's engaging you. The law requires certified mail.
Certified
and
mail.
TPA. That's the first batch, and then it comes in the regular mail.
Okay, I have.
And they've got 60 days? Or is
I think it's actually 90 to 120 days in
I think that's
ETPA.
New York City.
And if someone signed a lease that that did not conform with DHCR, with like the ETPA rules, at a 0% adjustment in that 2022 to 2023 year, do they have a remedy that could
Overcharge case.
and they could get an overcharge? So they would file an overcharge case to reduce the rent to the appropriately adjusted
Right. And to
negative
conform and
15%.
ensure that their lease and the terms and conditions of their lease have not been altered based on whatever's going on now.
Thank you.
A second question is that we were also told that if we didn't sign the lease, that the landlord legally had a right to proceed against us. And it could lead to eviction. But Stony Run, I think I'm one of 3 people, the person said in the office, that has required a certified mail lease. Everything is only on the website, and that's the only thing that they're offering to anybody.
The website is a benefit to the owner. The law is clear. They're supposed to send the stuff out, certified mail, return receipt requested. That's the way it's supposed to be done.
And what complaint would a tenant bring to
Lease
change
violation.
that? A lease violation. So
And a couple of years ago, they passed a law regarding electronic leases. The tenant has to basically opt in, and then they can remove themselves if they want to. But if the owner is not allowing them to opt in and forcing them to do it, that's not acceptable.
What has DHCR done to communicate these requirements to the property owners so that they can understand what their obligations are under the law and make sure that they're complying to the best of their ability?
When Guy does his presentation, he can tell you all of the stuff that we've done, but we've worked again with the Hudson Valley Property Association, and they clearly know what their rights and responsibilities are. We have sent at least 3 or 4 various packets to them. We've again provided trainings to them. If they don't know, they need to follow. Bottom line is, you're an owner. You know what your responsibilities are. It's your job to figure this out. We're here for you. We'll explain your rights and responsibilities, but we can only do so much. And we've done everything that we're supposed to do, in particular with the owners, because It's only a small handful of them. It's only 64 buildings. We're not talking about like 46,000 buildings in New York City. We're talking about 64 buildings in Ulster. Later, I could ride my bike around here and figure out where the buildings are. Your responsibility. You can't skirt the law and think that it's going to be okay, because it's not.
And if they have questions, they can always call the public information number that we have at DHCR, and they would provide them the information they need.
And in fact, I think when we first came up here, we did an owner's night with the registration and all that other stuff. So,
And it prominently featured the hotline to call.
guy can probably do that. I don't know. Remember the numbers, 833 something. Anything else?
I just want to confirm, we had heard some testimony on Saturday stating that there is no punitive measures that DHCR can take to landlords that don't comply. And it seems like you're stating that that is not the case.
That's correct.
Okay,
That is correct.
thanks.
I feel like I'm also hearing that the punitive measures are starting now.
On the registration side.
Yeah.
But on the compliance side, in terms of case processing, it's always been in place. Again, because of the uniqueness of what's happening here, it's been kind of like starts and stops with us. And I think now we're at a point now where we can continue the full process so that people actually recognize the engagement of the Office of Rent Administration.
Just one other thing, as a point of information, there was a tenant that testified last week that they filed a complaint and that, I think the term was incorrect, but it was an inspector came out to their apartment and they were still waiting. An order was issued within 3 months of that time period, ordering a rent reduction and finding a service reduction. So when we do that, if the services are not restored, then the tenants have to file a non-compliance proceeding, and it's on the orders we send them. At that point, the owner will be held accountable and will probably be fined and directed to restore whatever that service is. So, I mean, the orders are very clear about what needs to be done.
We have one case at Stony Run that is someone's door did not fit. They came in and the landlord put in a new door and it didn't fit properly, and it was complained about. Somebody came from DHCR and said it was correct, and then they received a ruling in the mail that they could revert to the last RGB increase. It didn't say guideline, it said increase.
That way. I'd have to go back and look at the way it's done.
Which is meaningless in our case, because we've had no increases.
We did.
Yes.
We did.
Did.
We did. We issued an order, a service reduction order, finding that it was a reduction and advising the owner to repair it. I'm sure there was a reduction, and you're right, because, you know, your 2022, 2023 guideline is an anomaly, so they have always been written in a way that it was a decrease, because if you look at the law, a service reduction is responded to with a rent reduction rollback to your past rent. So clearly it wouldn't be a rollback if the past rent was already a different number. But that individual on that order, it also said if they didn't get the service restored, that they had to file a non-compliance proceeding. And if it's the same person that testified here last week, she indicated she was still waiting for an order from DHCR a year later. That order was issued 3 months after she filed it. So I went back to the office and confirmed that. So her order was issued like within 3 months. So she just needs to file a non-compliance proceeding if her door has not been repaired.
And sorry, April, you've got her contact information. Could you send her a note that says that? You can't send her a note that says that. Okay.
In those situations,
I can.
in those situations, the tenant also
will.
gets a copy of that. Yeah.
The order is mailed to the tenant and the owner. The inspector, or their reps if they had a rep, but An inspector comes out and does it. That inspection report is given to an examiner. The examiner issues an order which is signed by a rent administrator. That order is mailed to both the tenant and the owner and or their reps. And on the order, it says that the owner is supposed to comply with restoring the service. If it has not been done, within 30 days, the tenant can file a non-compliance proceeding, and the agency will follow up with the tenant in that regard and the owner.
Guy, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. I do hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Guy Alba. I'm the Assistant Commissioner of Homes Community Renewal. Along with me tonight is Michael Langiuli and Salvatore Howie, both from the Research and Analysis Unit. We'll go through some of the information that you received yesterday. Wanted to just bring a couple of points that Woody mentioned to light. The first one is, yes, there is an info line that owners and tenants are able to contact us for any assistance in the ETPA counties. There's a phone number, which is 718-262-4912. That's 718-262-4912. And also an email address, that's an info line. That's ETPA, just like Emergency Tenant Protection Act, just ETPA at hcr.ny.gov. And those are the info contacts points where owners and tenants are able to reach out, find out a little bit about what is happening in ETPA countings, and we try to guide them and put them on the right road. We have worked with also, I noticed that, Woody mentioned it a couple of times, with the Hudson Valley Property Owners Association, just letting them know that it's incumbent upon them to do the survey. The survey opens up every single year. It has for many years, probably before I was born. It's been around from March 1st. And we close it around middle of May towards the end of May. It all depends, but we try to work with the owners. We send owners United States Postal Service letters saying, hey, March 1st is coming right about, and we would like you to remember to go online. We tell them where, how, and register and do the survey. We also follow up with approximately, I don't know, anywhere from 15 to 20 emails to the owners during the survey period, which again, anywhere from March 1st, for the purpose of this exercise, until May 31st of each year. So we reach out, we explain to them, all the staff knows that it's very, very important for every owner to submit the survey. The more we have, the better numbers we can provide to you.
Guy,
yes.
Guy, it's Woody.
Hi,
Listen,
Woody.
can you explain the importance of the survey and why, in fact, the numbers are what they look like?
So the importance of the survey is that they allow this board and any ETPA board know exactly what is the income, or at least the average or medium income of owners and buildings under ETPA in Kingston, and what are their expenses. It's an operating and maintenance survey. And we'll go through it in a few seconds, and I will explain to you, and I'm sure you will see how important it is in your deliberations as we go through it.
And Guy, we can't force owners to submit information to us.
No, we just can encourage them. It's better for them to submit so they can show this board and other boards that they have expenses. If they don't have any expenses, the board would assume that there are no expenses. So it is incumbent upon them to actually submit a survey for us. But no, as per the appeals, it was about, April can give you the exact dates probably. We no longer penalize for non-submission.
Thank you.
I hope everyone received this. I'm going to share my screen, and I won't be able to see you, and I apologize, but I hope everyone can see the Ulster County screen. Maybe Woody, let me know if you guys can see it before I start.
It's on the screen. They probably can't see it, but I
Okay,
think everyone's got a copy or kind of around. So
perfect.
continue.
Okay, so basically we've received 19 schedules. 3 of them were either a number of owners that were new, or we were not able to tabulate their data. So the survey that you see in front of you has 16 schedules for buildings, and they contain about 441 units that were subject to the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. We have the categories of income and expense, and I'm going to talk to you about Table 1 since you are a new board, and I know we have some new members. Let me speak about the what is included in the various numbers that you see in front of you. And of course, add 3 zeros to all the numbers that you see it at the end, of course. Add 3 zeros to the right of all the numbers that you see in front of you. Income, residential income. It includes the annual rental income, residential dwelling units, anything like garages, parking spaces that are related to the residents. So it doesn't include rental income from, residential units and those units that are exempt from this regulation. You'll see there's also a topic that says non-residential rental income, and that includes annual income from sources such as like stores and anything like professional businesses, business use, and garage and parking for those who are not tenants or not renting in the building. Miscellaneous income or other income is a little bit more complex. It's more of the washing machines, the laundry equipment. Some owners have sign rentals or key sales. They charge, I know everyone has a cell phone, but people have and still do have pay phones and pay stations. Some are interest that is earned on cash balances and charges for water, gas, electricity, telephone, fuel, and other special services that are such as energy conservation credits, insurance proceeds. Sometimes owners get insurance proceeds, security deposit, and all other type of sources. That's the miscellaneous that we don't include in the residential rental income. The expenses, well, expenses, the big one is we start with the fuel. Basically oil, gas, electric, anything used to heat during the year, operation for the property, gas to heat the building, and such as, whatever the consumption is. Utilities that including sewer and water charges, exactly what the water charges and utilities and gas and electric that we do. You'll see some of the payroll. Payroll is the wages, anything related to the costs of all their employees. Anyone who's engaged in operating the building is considered an employee. Superintendent, for example, if they have an elevator operator, doorman, etc., porters, handymen. Real estate taxes, those are the taxes that they pay every year. School, county taxes, all are assessed valuation, all are included in this section. Insurance is straight, exactly what it is. It's the expense for incidental to the management of anything property that claimed, of anything such as insurance that you pay on your mortgage or income taxes, federal income taxes. Those are the taxes that are expenses. Insurance is straight what it is. It's insurance. There's so many different elements of it. It could be fire insurance, mortgage insurance, boilers, elevator insurance, sprinkler, leakage insurance. There's a lot of different elements here, and we include it in the insurance. Management expense, it's basically expense that incidental to management, such as federal income tax returns, and includes management fees, anything for agents that manage the building, office salaries and expenses, It includes also like such as also telephone charges used for the office managers and office salaries, fees, legal expenses, anything to do with accounting and auditing fees, professional fees, anything that has to do with the operation and management of the building will be under that. Repairs and maintenance, again, painting, decorating, plumbing repairs, carpentry, electricity, general repairs, anything around the building, that would be shown here in the repairs and maintenance category. Interest is any interest that is paid or accrued, anything that you see on your income tax, for example, the federal income tax, anything that's outstanding on the mortgages, any loans that they have, any other loans that they have besides mortgages or funds that they borrowed to finance and operate the properties. Depreciation, again, that's more of an accounting element, and we added in for your it's basically for your ability to see the numbers with depreciation and excluding depreciation. So it's expense excluding interest and depreciation and interest and depreciation, which we put on our data for you to have. So looking at the numbers, and we'll go again, income, you're looking at about, you can see that there's a steady rise in income from 2021. Oh, I'm sorry. This survey only covers 3 years. Every survey covers 3 years. So it covers 2021, 2022, and 2023. So you can see that income has gone up over the period 21 to 23. Again, the rental incomes, miscellaneous, real estate, we have not gotten any information from them on any real estate information. And again, this is information that the owners provide. And after they provide this information, at the end of the survey, they affirm that the information that they provided us is accurate. Non-residential income, again, about 77,000. We're not, the big numbers on the income is about 7,400,000 to about 8,300,000. Expenses, the biggest, as you can see, is the real estate taxes. Real estate taxes takes the largest chunk of the expenses. We're looking at interest and interest depreciations, and what their total expenses is on the bottom. Again, add 3 zeros to all the numbers that you're seeing. So second chart, we wanted to give you a point, and we give you a little bit of.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about this first chart?
Sure, go ahead.
So I just want to highlight that I very much appreciate that you put interest and depreciation separately from the other expenses, just because interest and depreciation are expenses that are so much an idiosyncratic feature of when someone bought a building and what their capital structure is for their building. And if I buy a building and then I refinance it and I take money out to buy a vacation home, my interest expense is going to go up, but that's not really changing anything about the type of income that the building produces. And so I think I really appreciate that is kept separate. And similarly, depreciation, right? Like if I've bought a building 27 and a half years ago, I'm not going to see any depreciation from that original purchase price any longer versus the buildings that were purchased more recently. But again, that has nothing to do with the conditions of the buildings or the actual expenses in running the buildings. Interest and depreciation really, they belong separately, and I appreciate that you treat them this way. I want to come back to the ways in which you have confidence in the accuracy of these data. Do you do any spot checking of reports from owners? I saw in the New York City report that you shared, which I appreciate. It included the fact that they called 70% of the owners and got like actual insurance bills, and so they were able to document that like these were accurately reported information. What type of a backup do you get from owners, and what type of confidence do you have that owners produce accurate figures?
So we may be translating, you and I, spot checking differently. So yes, we do a lot of spot checking, and I'll explain how that works. No, we do not call owners and ask for the physical, invoices. However, we are quite aware of what each municipality, locality, what a building costs to operate. And we know exactly what they charge, and we know what, so we were able to immediately see if there are any outliers. Something that, for example, if a building, a 6, 7 unit building in a comparable neighborhood is telling me that they are spending, let's just for argument's sake, let me just take, simple numbers for a second, that they're spending $50,000 on fuel to heat the building every year, while another building is reporting that they're spending $125,000. We're going to look at all the buildings in that area and that size building, and we'll see what, I'm not sure exactly which company is in Kingston, but let's just say Con Edison, PSG, exactly what they charge, what their taxation is, and we will know exactly what, for that size building, we are going to be expecting the fuel charges to be. When something like this, and as I said, we do very, very careful checking. It's actually very deep checking. We immediately send the survey back to the owner. We do not include it. It usually follows up with an email asking the owner to explain the discrepancy between what we know is the expense in that area, in that locale, and what the owner is reporting. And we oftentimes, it's just a small clerical error. And other times there are emergencies, let's say, that occurred in the building, which caused something to go up. So at that point, we probably would say to ourselves, we cannot include that type of survey because maybe they had a major leak from the boiler, just as an example. So that will take the numbers off the chart, and we would not include that building.
And when was the last time that DHCR did a sort of comprehensive audit to really evaluate, like, not just are there outliers, but how accurate are the figures that are reported?
We do that.
I think, hold on, Guy. I think the uniqueness of the survey is all of the information is based on what the owners provide us. There is no audit mechanism for this, again, by statute, down to the fact that owners don't have to respond to us. And it becomes a challenge, not only for us as staffers to the ETPA counties, but for you as board members to make an informed decision when you don't know what the numbers actually are. And I think it's, again, the uniqueness of the survey. And we lost a court case, what, 12 years ago? Sampson, where basically we used to mandate that owners would provide us this information. And an owner took us to court and we lost. And now it's, call it, this is what we're now seeing that's happening. 64 buildings. How many buildings submitted to you, Guy?
Well, there are about 19, but included in the survey, 16.
16. Out of the 16, how many were good?
No, 16 were good surveys.
16 were good, 3 were no good.
Correct.
That's less than half.
And I mean, it would make sense to me that, I mean, we know landlords are talking to each other and organizing around this law. It would make sense to me that people wouldn't submit their data, like their survey, if they didn't think it would be in their favor, right? Like be in the favor of the landlords, ultimately. Does that make sense to you as a
So I can tell you that, looking at the other ETPA counties, Nassau, Rockland, Westchester, which have been in the system for almost 50 years. Um, if I was an owner, if you were an owner, I would not even think twice. I would immediately submit a survey. On March 1st, I would submit a survey. Because if I did not submit a survey, then come time for a vote from the Rent Guideline Board, and the Rent Guideline Board would be looking at nothing and say, hey, I guess the owners are doing very well. They have no expenses, zero guidelines. So I, as an owner, would want to submit my survey.
The 16, just to understand this a little bit better, so this is just an aggregate of these 16 properties, correct?
That's correct.
And can you give us any idea on like the types, we don't have a large number of properties that are covered under ETPA here in the city of Kingston, and in that there is a wide range of property types, which are going to have very drastically different types of income and expense ratios. Could you give us, is there a way that you could either provide us with this information broken down a little bit based on like general amount of units in a building, or give us some guideline between one or two large properties will skew these numbers completely different than, 5 or 6 or 10 small properties. So I'm just trying to,
So
be able to understand it a little bit better.
to answer your question, I'm just going to give maybe Sal and Mike a chance to look at it, but and maybe we can come back to your question, as they say, circle around to your question on that particular point. And let's just focus, if we can, on the survey, but we'll keep that question aside. I won't forget it. I won't sign off before trying to answer your question.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, any more questions regarding the first tabulation?
No, I think we're done with our interruption. Thank you.
Okay. No interruptions. Everything, all questions are good. We also try to give you a picture of the percent distribution of expenses to see, so you can see, of course, you saw the numbers before. You saw, of course, that real estate taxes are a big portion of one's expenses. So this just, it gives you just a distribution. You can see over here, again, about 23% of the expense comes from real estate taxes. And as Noah mentioned, we try to, again, this is an accounting, it's all part of an accounting element here. So expense excluding interest and depreciation and interest and depreciation. And we break it down to you so you can see the distribution of those expenses on the second table. The third table, we're doing comparison. There's a percent change on the income and expenses from 21 to 22, because again, we're covering a 3-year period. So from 21 to 22 and from 22 to 23. And you can see the percent change of the income and expenses. And these are, 7.4 and 4.1, very reasonable for, this. Again, we entered the interest and depreciation, and also we excluded interest and depreciation. Again, this is only for your knowledge, for the purpose of showing you what accounting information the survey, the owners in the surveys are providing. This is the fourth chart is annual income versus the expenses. So
Sorry, Guy,
Sure.
I would love to go back to chart 3 for a
Go ahead.
second, just to get a sanity check. So I am looking at sort of the bottom line figure of expenses excluding interest and depreciation. Is that a small decrease in overall expenses exclusive of interest and depreciation
Is that a small,
in 2022 to 2023?
so it's the change.
Yeah,
Again,
so
it's the change between what the numbers are at 2022 to 23.
So the
So there's a
cost to
small-
operate the ETPA buildings in this study went down very slightly
Correct.
in the last year. Thank you.
The fourth table, sorry, give me a second. The fourth table is just income versus expenses. Gives you a chance to see exactly what the total income is and the expenses before depreciation, after depreciation, what is the cash flow that they have, and just the percentage breakdown. The real key, tables that you are extrapolating a lot of this data, again, everyone is different, is definitely the first and second tables. We also provided you with an additional tabulation. This is the cost to income ratio. Every business wants to stay below the 100 percentage point, and that's what the cost to income ratio, including interest and depreciation, and also excluding interest and depreciation for the last 3 years. Each year is different. And as you can see, we have gone from 80% in 21, that's including interest and depreciation, to 74%, which means income has grown.
Sorry, I'm looking at this this cost to income ratio excluding interest and depreciation, because that's just feels like that's cleaner for me. And I am seeing in 2021, 57.87% of the income that came in to ETPA buildings was spent on these expenses that you've identified and that owners have reported,
That's correct.
exclusive of interest and depreciation. And then in 2022, 55.5% of the income was spent on costs to maintain the buildings, and that is a smaller share of income. And then again in 2023, an even smaller share of income was required to do the operating expenses of the buildings. Is that correct?
You are correct.
So this looks like an improvement in the financial position of the buildings in this survey.
Correct.
And
Now, keep in
at least
mind,
their operating expenses.
correct.
Do you have a comparison between these cost to income ratios and the cost to income ratios that we've seen in other ETPA counties?
So other ETPA counties have many more years, anywhere from 8, 9. Their chart actually looks like your chart starts in 2021. Their chart starts in 1985 or 1987. And you can see, different gradual points. We did see in some counties that they hit the 100% mark. But I do have it. Can I share it right now? No, but you're more than welcome to go to hcr.ny.gov under the Office of Rent Administration. And if you look at public information, if you look at the public hearing, you'll see, of course, this data that I'm showing you right now, this data that I'm provided. But you also see the same data for Westchester, Rockland, and Nassau County. So you'll be able to compare if you would like to see the data.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Westchester right now, and I see that the total cost to income ratio in Westchester County between 1987 and 2021 has not been below 58.2%, and that's excluding interest and depreciation. So these 3 years that we have in Kingston, the building's cost to operate a smaller share of their income than has ever been the case in the reports from Westchester County since 1987.
Well, keep in mind 2 things. One is you're dealing with a survey from 16 surveys. In comparison to that, you're looking at you said Westchester. You're looking at Westchester, which has most of the time has had 400 or more surveys. Now, if you look at Rockland, which is closer to to Kingston, you'd see an opposite effect actually this year. I think they had 14 surveys. So again, you can compare, but this is the numbers that we receive from the owners. This is not this is the numbers that the survey that we extrapolate from the survey and provide to you.
The guy, one other question on the source of the data set. You got from 21 to 23 here. Initially, I was thinking that the survey had owners this year submit 21, 22, and 23 data. Do you have information from previous years? Because they've had the option. I know that we haven't really gotten a lot of compliance, but they have had the option since 22 to submit this data, correct?
Whenever you opted into the ETPA, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whenever the first would be last year, which was
Yeah, so this 16 properties, is this including some same properties that submitted data last year, or like if somebody submitted data last year and not this year, or this year and not the previous year, how does that work
okay.
into this
No,
data
it's not
set?
necessarily the same. It's whatever was submitted for this cycle for the 2024 ETPA survey, guideline survey. This is the numbers that you're seeing for the 2024. So it's not the same, not necessarily the same owners, or it could be some owners which are the same.
Is if they are the same, or how many properties are the same, could you get us like a percentage of whether or not we're looking at consistent data source, or if this is
I can check it out and see what the comparison is, if there was anything substantial. And I'm not really sure if there's how many surveys were last year, but I can look at it and see exactly what. And you want to know you want to know basically how many of the owners that submitted last year, let's say for the 2023 cycles, also submitted for the 2024 cycle.
Yeah. Year over year comparison data, if we're looking at totally different properties, seems entirely useless to me.
Okay.
All right, sorry, our interruption is done.
Okay, no problem. Let me just enlarge this. We also provide you with this is what apartments we're renting, and what apartments that rented and had a renewal lease, what they rented under the new renewal lease. So I'm just gonna give you just an example. Let's take the first line. I don't know if you guys can see the 16,500 to 999 on the left side. On the left column is the old rental. On the right side is a new rental amounts that the owners reported to us. So if there were 16 units in the various 16 surveys, I guess it could be from 2 buildings, it could be from 5 buildings, it could be from a number of buildings that have rented in the past on the lease. It was anywhere from 500 to 999. 16 of them are now renting, those same 16 are now renting from about 1,000 to 1,499. So this gives you a change in previous rent and current rent, and this is for 1-year lease. We provided 2-year leases, and you can look at it also. This is the numbers, and this is by percentages. So let me go back to 4 pages. It's a 1-year lease, 2-year lease, and then a 1 year by percentage, 2 years by percentage.
Now, Guy, I am a little bit confused looking at this because my understanding is that since the city of Kingston opted into ETPA, that renewal leases had to be offered at no increase, and only recently has the appellate court upheld our first adjustment, which was a negative adjustment. And so I'm seeing increases on this sheet, and I'm hoping that you can tell me that those increases are all due to the fact that the beginning of this period that is being reported on was before Kingston opted into ETPA, rather than that this is a showcase of rent increases that happened in violation of ETPA. Can you
So,
just
so I can't
comfort me?
tell you, I can't tell you either one of those, whether A or B. I can tell you what they've reported, and I can tell you that basically we put it on a chart for you to see.
And so this is for new leases that happened in that whole 3-year period.
That's correct.
All right, which includes a period when rent was not regulated by ETPA.
Includes anywhere from 2021 to 2023, and that's what the owners reported to us.
So seeing the fact that there are increases here should not be a red flag.
It's hard to say, as Kingston is very young to ETPA, so it's quite difficult to say whether it's a red flag or not, but this is what the owners are reporting to us. I'll move on to the next tab. These are just the
Let me jump in, Guy. Hold on one second. So
Sure.
again, all the information that you're seeing is reported by the owners. There may have been, our registration is based on a snapshot of one day in the life of an apartment. So April 1st is our day. We don't know what happens on May 1st. We don't know what happens on June 1st. ETPA started July 28th of 2022, and the effective date was August 1st, where rents would have been frozen from that day on. And then the courts more or less said owners did not have to issue renewal leases until all of these issues have been resolved. And that's kind of where we are kind of now, still.
It kind of is where we are. Because of the ongoing stay, a lot of, because, not now, because of this.
Whoever is speaking, we can't hear you, and I'm sure Aline can't hear you if I can't hear you.
Okay. Because of the stay up until the prior court case, a lot of people were just status quo. There were no increases, there were no decreases. I don't know what these numbers represent. You know, owners were also, even though the guideline board issued a reduction, 15%, and then issued zeros, owners were entitled to do $15,000 worth of renovation work in their apartment. That could be part of it. I mean, at this point, we're just going to be guessing as to what the increases are, or they could have all just been before July 2022.
Thank you, Guy.
Hey, not a problem. The final sheet is, we wanted to give you guys a snapshot of what we mailed out, what we send out to the owners, how many buildings we've contacted, how many we received, and how many we were able to tabulate. So this is just for your information. This is mostly what you guys were asking me at the beginning of the presentation. You know, how many people were sent, how many were tabulated. It's just to gives you a little snapshot of what occurred, and how many owners replied, and what percentage of what of the global number of the 59 who replied, which is about 27% of the 59 that we were hoping. You know, we hoped for 59 surveys, but we only received 27 good surveys this year. 27% of the surveys. And if you have any questions, please, open to.
Off the top of your head, do you know how many this compares to last year?
I do not. Very few last year. Very few. It would be very problematic to even calculate.
Yeah, I have some numbers if you want me to speak that was asked about earlier. So we actually received six surveys last year, and of those, 5 of them are, I would say, repeat. So 5 of the owners who submitted their buildings last year did submit again this year. That was one of the questions that was asked earlier. And then also there was a question regarding the breakdown of the properties. So we had 9 properties that were under 10 units. 1, 2, 3, 4 that were under 20, and the rest were above 50 units.
What are the response rates like to the survey in other counties where ETPA has been in place for a lot longer?
Sal, you want to take that?
So they do vary quite a bit. I would say the 38%, the 27% is on the lower end, but we do get upwards up to, I would say, 40. And we try to get around, that 33 to 35 range is kind of a good spot where we'd like to be at. Again, the survey is trying to capture a sample, right? And we're trying to take a sample of the total population. For every survey, no matter what facet of life, it's hard to get everyone to comply. So we're trying to get a snapshot, which is representative of the total population. So as I said, we have some smaller buildings, we have some medium-sized buildings, and then we do have some larger buildings. So it's a decent snapshot. Whether it's complete or not, we won't really know until we, kind of get a couple more years into the survey and we have an idea of, some other properties being able to supply us with all their information.
Hi, this is Mike. Mike Langeli from Research. We were in the Nassau meeting last night, and for this year's Nassau survey, we got actually a 54% response rate. Just want to throw that out there. I do have the number in front of me. And also, we were talking about large buildings. Yeah, in a survey that contains, 16, 18 buildings, one large building can actually skew the numbers, most definitely in any one category. In Rockland, we actually give 2 sets of tabulations. We do have a large building in Rockland with over 560 units. So we do give the board 1 set of tabs including the large building, and another set of tabs excluding the large building. Because that large building can definitely tilt the scale, no doubt.
Yeah, that's what I was actually just going to ask. Is there any way that we could get the tabulation for like a group above, 10 units and less and above 10 units, something like that?
I would say, that's not really something you want to look at just because it's not going to be a reliable sample. Even this sample is, right kind of where we want to be, but having the more you break down the sample, the less reliability it's going to provide. And now not only will that one building skew the tables, but now any one property within that smaller sample is going to skew. So if we have one owner who has, say, a 6-unit property, but for whatever reason has large expenses for a number of years, that owner is going to skew the numbers for all the other 6-unit properties because it's going to be even a smaller size sample. So I would definitely be very much against, breaking it down by unit size. We don't even do that for Westchester, and Westchester has 400, units. It just so happens that Rockland has one property that's over 500 units. So I think the closest next property is maybe 200 units. So there's a 300 unit gap in between the next property in Rockland. So it really makes more sense to kind of separate that property specifically and not separate a group of properties.
Just to understand how much of like a deviation or outlier we might be looking at within these numbers, like could you give us an idea of, and probably not at this very moment, but whether or not there is anything included in this survey that has any of these numbers that are more than, let's say, 10% different than like in a rate in a ratio point of view from the other properties?
Well,
Go ahead.
on on the survey instructions, and you guys, I believe for Rockland, they asked for any kind of explanation for more than 30%. For Nassau and Westchester, they asked for an explanation if there's a 50% or more increase or decrease. And remember, if the expense is only $1,000 and then next year it goes $2,000, that's a large increase. But on the grand scheme of things, it's not really a large increase. But when we do see those large percentage increases, first of all, the system will flag it where they have to leave a comment and have to explain why there's such an increase or decrease. And then we also do audit or view these schedules. And if we have an issue and there's not a satisfactory explanation that we believe, we're going to return it back to the owner and ask for a more, clearer explanation. And if they provide an explanation, but it's, let's say, a one-time large expense, I know in Westchester County, there were some properties that had, very extreme real estate tax refunds. So a real estate tax refund of over $500,000 is definitely going to skew the income, even for, the larger counties. So if there's one of those percentage changes that are very large, we're going to exclude that in the problematic category. So we'll move that, submission over into the problematic, and it won't be included into tabulations.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm concerned about is like if we have a situation where we have a number of these small properties that maybe have expense ratios that are like 75%, and then we've got one that's doing 50%, and that's a larger property, then these numbers basically become useless to us. So like that's what I'm trying to suss out, whether or not that's the type of situation we might be looking at, or like what's really going, the expense ratios for some of these larger properties are going to be drastically different than for the smaller ones. And that's just what I want to get a feel for, and the concept between trying to separate the larger and smaller properties in some way. If you can give us some kind of guidance to the best of your ability in from that point of view, it would be very much appreciated.
Well, we're gonna definitely look at that option, and if it's something that's feasible, we're gonna send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's try to make sure that gets done. I don't think this is a heavy lift. We're talking about 14 buildings.
No,
I
it's not the
Bottom
number.
line is there's nothing that's there that's under 50, that's over 50 units. This is not a hard lift. Let's make sure they get this so they can understand what's happening on the ground here in Kingston.
Yeah, and a bigger response rate would also help alleviate the problem of having a larger building tilt the scales.
And no, absolutely. And I think, again, the
Yeah.
challenge is that we can't mandate the owners to provide us the information. And
Yeah.
I think Anthony's question is legitimate, because if these smaller property owners are getting hammered differently than a big building, they need to understand that as they go through this process of promulgating an adjustment. That makes sense?
It's hard to tell, just because when Rockland established the additional building, the large building, it was after many years. It was also done by a vote. It was done by a vote of the membership, where they asked us to give them a survey which includes the large building and one that does not include the large building. And they requested after a number of years, so they were able to compare and see that there are maybe some outliers. But we'll look at these numbers, not a problem.
Right. Okay, good. Because again, I don't want to use Rockland, because Rockland is unique in how their stuff came to us. But again, this is a very small survey. They're very new to us. And I think for the board to make an informed decision, this makes logical sense, recognizing that most of the units that have submitted to us owners who have submitted to us are small owners. We're talking about buildings that are under 20 units. And we only got 14 of them. It's not that hard. We can make this happen. Thank you.
I'm gonna do a stop share here, but we'll just keep on taking Q&As.
Other questions about the Kingston specific data?
I am just curious. I see that there are 54 ETPA buildings instead of 59. And I'm wondering if there were ETPA exceptions, where would we find that information about who it is? Or
I'm sorry, where do you get the 54 number? I don't have that.
I think Woody's answer to that question earlier was that there's a set of buildings that have not yet completed their initial registrations. And so those buildings aren't included in this 59 count. And there are also a number of buildings that are in the process of applying to be adjudicated of whether or not they should or should not be ETPA properties.
okay, so if they are ruled to be adjudicated, where would I find that information?
Woody, where are you going to find, where would one find the answers to those questions once DHCR has adjudicated the answers to is a building ETPA?
Once we issue a determination, we'll let the board know where the status of it is. Once it goes through the appeal process first, and then after that, we can release, right? Okay.
Thank you. I would love, you provided us with a set of information from New York City and also from the BLS, and I'm curious if you could walk us through it as well.
Just wanted to just point something quickly, just the old lease, the new old rent, new rent, just remember those are vacancy leases. I think I may have misspoken and said that those are renewals. So just keep in mind that those are vacancy leases. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Let me see if I have that information. Give me just a minute.
Hey, Woody or April? While guys looking for that information, could you, I know that the rules around vacancy leases have recently changed. Could you give us a quick synopsis of exactly how that works? Because we don't set a vacancy guideline, and
There are no vacancy guidelines. So whatever guideline is passed by this board is applicable to both vacancies and renewals, okay, which is across from New York City through ETPA counties. There is, what has been changed is the amount of investment an owner can pass along to the tenants. So until this year, it was since 2019, it was $15,000. 15-year period, temporary, and it was only 3 improvements. So think about it like this. If an owner went in and did a refrigerator, that counted as 1. If he went in a year later and did the kitchen floor and it was counted, it was fine. It was within a 15-year period. So the law this year was changed. The owners are entitled to do renovation work of up to $30,000. And then it's permanent increase, and there's a calculation and a formula for how much of it gets passed along to tenants. They can also, if they've had a 25-year vacancy, a 25-year occupancy by a tenant, and the apartment is considered to be substandard, they can do up to $50,000 worth of work. That's a little different. They need to come to the agency in advance. They need to get a pre-approval and submit copies of what the apartment looked like before, what the apartment looked like afterwards. And that improvement will actually be something that's reviewed by DHCR, and the increase will be passed by DHCR, which is different than the 30,000. The 30,000 is basically you do the $30,000 worth of work. I haven't actually done the calculation, but I believe it comes out to be about $200. Yeah, like 176 as a monthly increase for that amount of work that was done to the apartment.
And that would happen, an owner could do that when there's a vacancy, when there's a changeover of that unit, could do that work, and then that it's applied to the new tenant's lease.
For the $50,000
Yeah.
one, yes.
Yeah.
It's still over a 15-year period.
Yeah, so the maximum that they could raise it is 100, it turns out to be like 100 and something, whatever you said, right? That would be the maximum.
The maximum is $50,000. So they could do, an owner can do as much renovation work as he wants to, as
Yeah.
much upgrade as he wants to. The increase is limited to that percentage of the $50,000 in the second one and the $30,000 in the, if it's done the first way.
Yeah, which, as Woody said, that works out to be 100 and something dollars a month.
They're about 176.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, okay, thanks.
So, I'm sorry, it was Noah that you asked me the question about these, four?
Yeah, I would love if you
Okay.
could highlight
So,
for us
Um,
what we should be
basically,
taking out of it.
all, it's just additional homework. It's not, and it's not something that we've done in-house. It's not our work. It's, you can choose to look at it, you could choose to review it. It's just additional information that may help you, understand, the largest city, I guess, closest to Kingston being New York City with rent stabilization and rent control, laws, which are very similar, of course, to the ETPA. So we included some of their, breakdowns, price index operating costs. Again, it's quite extensive right now to even attempt to go through it, but please, if you wish to look at it, review it, understand it, see what kind of costs and expenses this would be, something that you would choose to do or not. Of course, the law also allows you to bring any homework to your deliberation, to do your own research, not only the survey, which we provide. So this information I cannot speak to it. I can only tell you that this is information that we provide to the boards for many, many, many years. It's more like additional homework. Some of the mortgage survey again. And we also give you information about the consumer price index, so you can see what the CPI is, not only for New York State, but also for, in a sense, New York City. This is the CPI Consumer Price Index for April. At that point, I think they're publishing around this time, the May, but this just allows you to see, a year over what is the consumer price index changes. This happens to be for New York, and then there's another one over here, which is basically New York, New Jersey. So it's just additional information, and you can choose to use it or not. It's not any information that we've put together. I mean, that we built.
Thank you, Guy.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate the diligence and care that go into tabulating these results and reminding folks to submit answers to the surveys and identifying what to count and what can't be counted. I really appreciate your work here, and I'm very glad that this year we have a set of data to use to inform our deliberations next week. And I join you in hoping that we do see increased response rates from owners.
Right.
Because that will provide us with better data that will help us be better deliberators.
It's definitely a teamwork. And thank you to Michael and to Salvatore for their help also in putting together all this information.
Thank you all.
Do we have other business before we wrap up this evening? Do you have? Is there?
Guy had mentioned that Rockland County had their board, specifically asked them for different information. Would it be helpful for us to make a motion to request this information be tabulated in a different way, or you think we can just expect that we might be able to get that before? Okay, all right, thank you.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Mie.
Yes.
I'm going to call on myself. I also vote yes. Lee,
Yes.
Junior,
Yes.
Carol, Arlene.
Yes.
The motion carries. We are adjourned. It is 7:44 p.m. Thank you so much to everybody who made this happen. I am very appreciative.
Thank you. Have a good night.